Hey there. All right. Next set of notes, the carbon cycle and the processes. So we're going to talk about what are the processes that cycle carbon through the environment. So that's the essential question. I talked about it before, how we have this matter gets recycled through um, the environment or the ecosystem. So we're going to look at specifically carbon. You may have in the past talked about water, and you were supposed to do that in your last set of notes, come up with some ways that water moves through the environment. So here we go, talking about carbon. Okay, so the carbon's recycling process, right? So this is a way that um, carbon moves between what we call reservoirs, right? So we learned that in our last um, set of notes is that the reservoir is where atoms are housed for certain periods of time, right? So, we have carbon inside of us. So we're considered a reservoir, the atmosphere, things like that. So we're going to learn about the different um, reservoirs that make up an ecosystem. First, we're going to talk about how, well, first of all, Earth, all life on Earth is carbon based, right? So you know that we talked about carbon, like the glucose molecule, and cellulose, and all these different types of things that are made up of carbon. Even our DNA is a carbon-based molecule. So proteins, DNA, and sugars all contain large amounts of carbon, what they call a carbon backbone. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the processes that are um, involved. Um, I feel like I missed a slide. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, but type of. Sorry about that. Okay, so the type of processes, we have two different types. We have biological, and then we're going to have physical. So biological is when living organisms are involved, right? So we talked about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Plants are involved in photosynthesis, and then cellular respiration, we have both plants and multicellular organisms, all organisms, right, for the most part, go through cellular respiration. So that's a biological process. Um, A physical process is when it moves between reservoirs without the help of living organisms. So, for instance, we're going to learn about volcanic activity, right? Moving carbon from the underground to in the atmosphere. So not um, that's a physical process. Okay, so when carbon moves between reservoirs without the help of living organisms. Okay, so the first process that we're going to talk about, and this is a review. I shouldn't say sort of, is photosynthesis. Plants convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere or ocean water, because it does occur in the ocean, into sugar in the biosphere. All right, so we go from, so plants could, um, so, sorry about that. So six carbon molecules leave the atmosphere and enter the plant. These six carbon molecules are converted into glucose that is used to form the plant. And then also we talked, and then, an organism will eat it. So, for instance, so what we're going to do is we're going to say atmosphere or hydrosphere, right? Because it could be in carbon dioxide could reside in here, and it's going to go through the process of photosynthesis. Will go to the biosphere, okay? Atmosphere or hydrosphere to the biosphere. Cellular respiration, again, something that we've talked about. Plants and animals convert sugars in the biosphere, and um, that gets turned into CO2 that goes to the atmosphere or ocean water, right? So that's cellular respiration. I don't know why I put that in parentheses. So we have six carbon molecules of glucose are broken apart in organism and leave the organism as six carbon dioxide molecules. Respiration takes place in all plants and animals because everything needs to use energy from sugar. Again, we just went over that. So where it goes is from the biosphere to the atmosphere and hydrosphere. Okay. Biosphere to the atmosphere or hydrosphere. So if it's like, let's say, a fish, carbon dioxide molecules will come out from the fish into the water. Okay, so again, cellular respiration is a process used by plants and animals to create energy. Oxygen is broken down, is used to break down sugar. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct. Okay, sedimentation. So this is biosphere to lithosphere, and the reason why is because it's the exoskeletons of the ocean organisms such as clams, oysters, plankton. Um, when they either break off or they pass away, the exoskeletons are going to go ahead and settle down into the floor of the ocean. So it's going to be biosphere to lithosphere, and we'll go through this process of calcification or sedimentation. So, number one, what happens is the ocean organisms use the carbon dioxide in the ocean water to create calcium carbonate. That's their hard shell, right? That's a CaCO3. All right. And then the second thing that happens is whoops, when they die, their skeletons sink to the bottom of the ocean. So that's step number two. And then over time, due to pressure, sorry, and break down and fuse together to form rock, so a sedimentary rock such as limestone. So that's the process of sedimentation. So it's going from, again, the biosphere to the lithosphere. Okay, next is consumption. All right, so I know it looks like he's eating something bloody, but he's eating a raspberry. So animals obtain their carbon by eating plants and other animals, right? So that we talk about, the process, the correlation between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Well, we're talking about consumption, and it is from the biosphere to the biosphere, right? Because regardless of they're eating a plant, it's a living thing, and then we're a living thing, so it's biosphere to biosphere. Decomposition, process where dead plant and animal material is broken down by bacteria and returned to the soil. So again, if we talked about last time, we consider soil part of the biosphere. So it's biosphere to biosphere. And I just put that soil in parentheses. So that's decomposition. All right. So what happens in decomposition? It takes place faster in the presence of oxygen because the bacteria are allowed to work faster. This oxygen enables more carbon to be recycled back into the soil instead of turning into fossil fuels, which we'll learn about a little bit later. All right, so that's decomposition. All right, so fossil fuel formation. So if there's no oxygen present, well, it's going to go ahead, over we're talking millions of years, pressure and heat is going to turn into fossil fuel. And so we consider that the lithosphere. So we're going to have the biosphere to the lithosphere, right? So living organisms to the rock, right? The lithosphere. And we talked about that last time. So these are our reservoirs, right? So dead matter is buried without oxygen and experiences a large amount of pressure and heat. All right. So the pressure and heat converts the carbon from molecules found in the biosphere to oil, coal, and natural gas. So, we have coal formation, which is a different process than oil and natural gas. So coal forms from the remains of plants, and these are mostly by the decay of marine organisms. All right. And the same thing, heat and pressure, heat and pressure. And you can, look at the sort of the pictures here, right? So layers of sediment compress the plant remains, heat and pressure within theirs causes coal to form. And these remains are buried in sediments, heated until they become energy-rich carbon-based molecules. So this we don't really talk about so much, the formation of it. Just be familiar with the coal formation and oil formation. Okay. It's nice to know the difference. Okay, so volcanic activity. Volcanic, I think everybody has learned about the Earth and the core and the convection currents and all that good stuff. Volcanoes melt carbonate rocks, limestone and marble, which we learned about before, and release carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere. So that's going from the lithosphere to the atmosphere. Lithosphere to the atmosphere. So again, we're talking about a physical process. Absorption, and this is a physical process too, is carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is being pulled into the ocean, and it's sort of you know always going back and forth, right? So when we talk about where does which reservoir has the shortest residence time, we'll talk about the atmosphere, right? Because it's always that carbon dioxide is always going into the water and back and forth, right? So increased carbon dioxide in the ocean causes acidification. So we talk about when we talk about coral, and that we have increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that actually goes into the ocean, and it can't get buffered. So it becomes acidic. So you can see this. I, Carbonic acid, I believe it is, this HCO3 minus, and that will, do the acidification, makes it a little bit more acidic. So atmosphere to hydrosphere. Combustion. Fossil fuel, human act. So these are, we don't really consider these. We're going to talk about impacts of humans. So these are not natural processes, right? So what we've talked about before are all natural processes, and even there could be some combustion that we consider a natural process. Forest fires certainly occur without the help of humans, with lightning and things like that. But when we talk about combustion in this sense, we're talking about human activity. So we're talking about combustion and deforestation. All right. So combustion is the burning of fossil fuels, in which release that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere a lot sooner than it would have normally got, if ever. Right. So if it wasn't for us drilling down to the fossil fuels, it would probably remain there forever. But hey, look, we can make energy out of this, so we're going to just go ahead and deplete those resources, right? And we've certainly heard about all of that recently. Deforestation is another human activity that um, it's sort of a double-edged sword in a sense, because not only does it decrease the amount of carbon dioxide pulled out of the atmosphere, but it decreases the amount of oxygen. So the actual um, amount of carbon dioxide compared to the atmosphere is higher, because there's less oxygen being created. So but for when we're just talking about the um, um, carbon dioxide, simply it just decreases the amount of carbon dioxide pulled out of the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. So these are human activities. Again, like I mentioned before, they're not natural activities. So that is it for the carbon process notes, and again, we'll review this in class.